The rain had turned to steam by the time Evelyn Harper stepped off the bus. It clung to her coat like sweat, hot and heavy, soaking into the canvas straps of the faded satchel on her shoulder. Her boots hit the asphalt with a dull slap, soles worn flat from 10-hour shifts and longer walks home. No one turned to look. No one ever did. She adjusted the navy brim of her service cap, pulled low enough to shield the pair of stripes sewn along its edge. No one cared what they meant. But the air inside the Austin VA Medical Center thickened the moment she walked in, as if the building itself could still remember. "You're not supposed to be here," the silence whispered. A rusted floor fan pushed stale air through the security entrance, stirring the scent of institutional bleach and overcooked coffee. Evelyn nodded at the guard, young, barely shaving, who glanced at her badge but not her eyes. "Janitorial's downstairs," he said. She didn't correct him. The elevator shook as it descended, its interior dim and mirrored, a cage of flickering fluorescence and scratched metal. Evelyn's reflection stared back, close-cropped hair tucked behind her ears. The brown skin along her jaw shadowed with heat rash. She blinked, then looked away. When the doors opened, the basement was already humming. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly pallor over linoleum floors and mop buckets lined like soldiers against the walls. She followed the smell of ammonia toward the utility room. Inside, two men argued in hushed tones over a clipboard. "I don't care what her file says," one of them snapped. "We're not running a charity. This isn't Camp Lejeune." "She has clearance, and she's overqualified," the younger man replied. "Then she shouldn't have applied for janitorial." Their voices stopped when they saw her. The supervisor was rail-thin, ex-military by the way he held his clipboard like a weapon. Chuck, 50, maybe older. One of those men who wore his belt tight and his respect tighter. "You Evelyn Harper?" he asked, eyes raking her uniform like it offended him. "Yes, sir." "You served?" 8 years, 3rd Infantry, 2 tours. Chuck sniffed. "We're not big on salutes down here." "I figured." He looked at her boots. "You'll be working night rotation. Trash, floors, hazmat disposal. You okay with that?" "I would not have applied otherwise." He handed her a faded green apron. "Mop closet's there. Stay out of the OR levels unless called, and keep your head down." The second man, mid-20s, wide-eyed, name tag read Benji, gave her a nod and a smile she didn't return. Evelyn took the apron. It was damp. By midnight, the hospital above them had quieted. The cafeteria was dark. The main elevators paused on upper levels, echoing with the faint calls of code blues and nurses' shoes clicking across polished tile. Evelyn moved like a ghost. Her route took her past the long corridor outside the pediatric ICU. The glass there fogged from the inside, soft white halos blurring the names on door placards. As she mopped, voices filtered through. Muffled cries, whispered prayers, the beep of machines. She paused outside room 3B. A child's voice, breathless and light, asked someone to read again. A woman's voice followed, cracking on the edges, reading the same sentence twice. Evelyn didn't linger. She kept her head down, her shoulders squared, but her grip on the mop handle tightened until her knuckles turned white. Downstairs again. Evelyn was rinsing the mop bucket when Benji wandered in, sipping from a vending machine soda. "You were in the Army, right?" he asked. She nodded. "My cousin just signed up, wants to be a medic. You ever know any?" "Couple." He watched her work a moment. "Chuck's kind of a jerk. Don't take it personal. He says women don't last long on night shift." Evelyn didn't look up. "Then I guess I will surprise him." Benji grinned. "You don't talk much, huh?" "Talk wastes energy." Another pause. Then, "You were in that bombing in Kandahar, weren't you? I read the name on your badge. Harper. Evelyn Harper." She froze. "You're that sergeant who pulled 5 guys out of a blown convoy," he said, voice hushed now. "Thought you were dead." "That was a long time ago." "But you got the Bronze Star. My uncle sent me the article." Evelyn's voice was low. "You should go back upstairs." Benji stepped back, awkward now. "Sorry. I didn't mean to. I said go." The mop bucket sloshed as she yanked it forward, pushing it into the shadows. At 2:30 a.m., she was cleaning the east corridor when the overhead speaker cracked to life. "Environmental services to ICU recovery. Code green spill." Evelyn dropped her cloth and turned. When she arrived, the hallway outside the room reeked of iodine and stomach acid. A nurse gagged near the wall. Inside, a teenage boy, barely conscious, post-op, had vomited across his gown and onto the floor. The child from 3B. Evelyn nodded to the nurse. "I need a fresh kit. This one's contaminated." The nurse blinked. "You're not supposed to be on this floor." "I am now." She pulled on gloves. Her movements were quiet, precise, cleaning the floor, then changing the sheets, then calming the boy's shallow breathing without a word. The mother wept in the corner, hand over her mouth. "You a nurse?" she whispered. Evelyn shook her head. "Then why are you—" "Because no one else would." When she finished, she pulled the trash liner tight and stepped back. The mother, still shaking, reached for her hand. "Thank you." Evelyn hesitated, then took it. Her palm was rough and dry, calloused from work. The woman's hand was trembling. "I didn't catch your name," she said. Evelyn turned away. "You wouldn't believe me if I told you." In the break room just before dawn, Chuck was waiting. He held a printed report in his hand, her full service record, Bronze Star, 2 Purple Hearts, discharge with honor. His face was unreadable. "You didn't put this on your application," he said. "I didn't think it mattered." Chuck nodded slowly. Then he set the report down and folded his arms. "There's a spot opening on second shift. Pays more. Less crap work. You interested?" Evelyn looked at the man, the same one who hadn't looked her in the eye 6 hours ago. "I'll think about it," she said. She walked past him, boots echoing down the hall. Behind her, Chuck watched, not speaking, not moving, as if seeing her for the first time. The air changed the moment she walked in. Not the temperature, the thermostat still read 73, but the feeling of the place. More eyes turned this time, hesitant, curious. Benji glanced up from the supply cart with a small wave. Chuck did not speak, but he stepped aside as Evelyn passed. It had been 3 days since the ICU spill, since the mother with shaking hands, since the moment something shifted. The mop still waited for her in the corner, unchanged. But she was not the same. The second shift hallway hummed with motion. Daylight workers in scrubs passed her on their way out, nurses checking clipboards, orderlies rushing carts of surgical linens to be autoclaved. It was cleaner, louder, faster, a different rhythm from the graveyard lull she had become used to. She moved like a shadow between them, unseen but necessary. Floors had to shine. Corners had to stay dry. Nobody tripped on her mop because nobody looked down. But someone had. A voice called her name as she stepped past the elevator bank. "Harper!" It was Benji. He jogged to catch up, holding a styrofoam cup in one hand and a clipboard in the other. "Hey," he said out of breath. I heard you took the second shift." She raised an eyebrow. "And?" "That's good. It's less graveyard, more actual daylight. Plus you won't have to deal with the weirdos who talk to vending machines at 3 a.m. Evelyn's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, but close. Benji took it as encouragement. He handed her the coffee. "I brought this. Black, no cream, I guessed." She took it but said nothing. The heat of it warmed her palms. He shifted awkwardly, then looked down at his shoes. I also, heard something else. About what you did. Not from you. From Chuck, actually. That caught her attention. Chuck? Benji nodded. Yeah, weird, right? He never talks to anyone unless they forget to label the ammonia. What did he say? That he was wrong about you. Said it plain. I was wrong. Like, out loud. In front of people. Evelyn's face remained still, but something behind her eyes shifted. Benji grinned. It was a real mark-your-calendar moment. Chuck was waiting near the staff lockers when Evelyn returned for her break. He handed her a folded sheet of paper, a printed training schedule with the words, Medical-grade sterilization certification circled in red. You're on it, he said. I did not request it. I know. She studied the paper. Why? Because nobody asks to clean up after trauma and then does it better than the damn nurses. Evelyn handed the paper back. You think this makes up for what you said when I arrived? Chuck did not flinch. No, but it's a start. That night, she returned to her apartment in the south end of the city, just past the overpass where the buses ran late and the streetlights flickered. Her living room smelled like dust and lemon polish. On the wall hung 3 framed photos, 2 in uniform, 1 in civilian clothes. The last one was the hardest to look at. Her brother, clean cut, grinning, a Navy corpsman who never made it home. She sat in the silence for a long time, unmoving, until the hum of her refrigerator brought her back. Evelyn stood and walked to her closet. At the back, behind an old duffel and a fireproof box, hung the dress blues she had not worn in 5 years. She touched the sleeve. The uniform felt like someone else's skin now, stiff, hollow. In the mirror, she saw herself, not as she had been, but as she was. Not broken, just paused. The next morning, the city simmered under a rising August sun. Evelyn arrived early. The hospital was barely waking when she stepped inside, the overhead lights still dimmed for night preservation. A new sign had been posted in the janitorial corridor, a list of employee names and service hours. At the top, scrawled in black marker, Employee of the Month, E. Harper. She stared at it, then turned away. Recognition was not what she came for. Later that day, during a supply run to the admin wing, Evelyn passed the lobby and saw her again, the woman from ICU room 3B, the mother. She was sitting alone on the vinyl bench, hands folded in her lap, eyes hollow. Evelyn hesitated, then approached. How is he? She asked. The woman looked up, her face lit with the sudden recognition. Oh, you were the one who helped us. That night. Evelyn gave a quiet nod. He's okay, the woman said, voice soft with exhaustion. He made it through recovery. They say he'll need more surgery, but he's breathing on his own. She reached into her purse and handed Evelyn a small envelope. I don't know your name, but my son, Aaron, he wrote something for you, after you left. Evelyn took the envelope, stiff with a child's drawing inside. Crayons. A soldier with a mop and a cape. I told him you were a janitor, the woman said, then corrected herself. He said you were a superhero. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the envelope. I'm not. The woman smiled. He still thinks so. In the staff lounge, Chuck was hunched over a laptop. Paperwork, incident reports, supply logs. He looked up as she entered. You get the note? He asked. She held it up. You're not going to hang it up or anything, are you? Evelyn shook her head. I don't need decorations. Chuck closed the laptop. But maybe, she said quietly, we need a few more capes. Chuck blinked. What does that mean? She reached for the mop cart, glancing toward the hallway where new recruits had just clocked in. "Train me on supply requisitions," she said. "Next week, if you're serious about making this place better." Chuck stared at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. "Fine. Monday. But you're doing the paperwork. I hate typing." That night, as Evelyn clocked out, Benji caught up to her at the sliding doors. "You heading out?" She nodded. He hesitated. "You think maybe sometime you could show me how to handle ICU cleanup? Like you did that night?" Evelyn studied him. "Why?" "Because people trust you when you walk in. I want to learn that." She tilted her head, considering. "Be here at 0600 Saturday. No gloves, no gear. Just observe." Benji grinned. "Deal." As she walked out into the parking lot, the summer heat already rising off the pavement, Evelyn Harper felt something unfamiliar. Not redemption, not peace, but motion. The kind that means something broken has started to shift. The storm hit just before shift change. Thunder cracked across the Texas sky, rattling window panes on the upper floors of the VA Medical Center. Rain fell sideways against the glass, painting streaks down the lobby doors. A power flicker turned the lights into strobes for a heartbeat before the backup generator kicked in, humming low and steady beneath the floor. Evelyn stood by the East Wing corridor, watching as the sky darkened. She could smell the rain before it reached her, that raw, metallic scent of earth turning over, of things buried rising to the surface. "Looks like hell's inbound," Benji said behind her, shaking water from his jacket. "Flood warnings just popped up for Travis County." Evelyn gave a small nod. Her boots were already damp from the mop room. The cuffs of her pants clung to her calves. She hated this part of storms, the way the wetness crept into your skin and stayed there long after the thunder passed. By 5:15 p.m., the ER had tripled in noise. Emergency alerts buzzed on hospital radios. The front desk overflowed with triage patients. A pile-up on I-35 had sent 7 injured veterans their way, some with critical injuries. One of them, unconscious and missing half his uniform sleeve, still had sand in the creases of his boots. Someone had pulled him out of an overturned truck and wrapped his bleeding arm in what looked like an old mechanic's towel. The medtechs moved with frantic precision, threading IVs, barking vitals, rushing crash carts across blood-slicked floors. Evelyn stayed out of their way, mostly, but she watched. She always watched. One of the gurneys stopped near the corridor where she was cleaning. The man on it was barely older than 20, pale, breathing shallow. The nameplate clipped to his boot read Rodriguez. His right hand clutched a dog tag so tight the chain had dug into his skin. Evelyn's eyes caught on the grip, that unconscious desperation, the kind that says, not yet, even when the body is ready to let go. By 7 o'clock, they needed more hands on deck. Not nurses, cleaners. The trauma bay tiles were streaked in blood and saline. The suction units hissed. A broken IV stand lay forgotten in the hall. Chuck radioed down from admin. His voice crackled through the old comm. "Harper, OR2 and ICU wing need emergency cleanup. Hazmat protocol. You up for that?" She stared at the speaker. "On it." Benji raised an eyebrow. "You sure? That's a hell of a first call." She was already tying her apron. "You wanted to learn," she said. "Follow me." The cleanup took 3 hours. ICU first. She and Benji worked side by side. He moved cautiously, trying not to make mistakes. She moved with grim efficiency. Every rag, every glove, every bucket was used, bleached, rinsed, reused. There was no time to be squeamish. "You okay?" he asked once, mid-shift. Evelyn did not look up. "Ask me that when the job's done." In OR2, the stench hit like a wall. Blood, burned tissue, the air stale from too many closed doors. The patient was gone, But the story remained, written in rust-red smears and discarded surgical wrappers. Benji gagged. Evelyn kept working. She sprayed, scrubbed, scrubbed again. Her hands moved with a memory older than this hospital. The rhythm of triage, of damage control, of save what you can. It was after 10 o'clock p.m. when they returned to the utility corridor, soaked in sweat and disinfectant. Benji collapsed onto a bench, arms shaking. "I'm not cut out for this," he said, voice cracking. Evelyn peeled off her gloves. Her fingertips were pale, waterlogged. She sat beside him but said nothing. He looked at her, eyes rimmed red. "How do you do this every day?" Evelyn stared ahead. Her voice came out low, flat. "You do not think about the mess. You think about the mother who gets to see her son tomorrow because someone cleaned the floor that stopped him from slipping. You think about the nurse who does not get sick because the linens were sterilized right." She leaned forward, elbows on her knees. "You think about the people who are still alive because somebody did a job no one wanted." Benji was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded. "I'll be back tomorrow." Chuck was waiting outside the supply room when she came back from locker cleanup. He held a tablet in one hand, eyes locked on the screen. "Harper." She stopped. "We've got an opening. Quality control liaison. Internal compliance. You'd split your time between janitorial and patient services. Liaise with admin. Manage a couple junior techs." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "That's supposed to be a promotion?" Chuck shrugged. "Pays more. Less mop, more clipboard. Still on your feet, though." "Why me?" Chuck met her eyes. "Because the ER supervisor asked for you by name. Said her floor has not been that spotless in 6 months. He paused. "Also," Rodriguez woke up. Asked who cleaned his room. Said he remembered a voice telling him to hold on. Evelyn froze. "I didn't say anything," she muttered. Chuck smiled. "Some people remember silence better than words." He handed her the tablet. "You want it? The position's yours." She stared at the glowing screen, then handed it back. "Let me think about it." That night, Evelyn sat in her car long after the rain stopped. The hospital lot shimmered under yellow streetlights. Steam rose from storm drains. In her lap sat the folded drawing from the little boy, the one with the mop, the cape. She opened it again. This time she saw something new. Behind the figure stood a second, smaller, smiling, holding the first one's hand. She hadn't noticed that part before. Evelyn closed her eyes. For a moment, she let the quiet settle. The storm had passed, but something was still moving inside her. Not grief, not guilt. Something older. The weight of being seen. At 6:02 a.m., the intercom crackled. "Code yellow, admin floor. All non-essential personnel hold position." The words echoed down the corridor, bouncing off the polished walls like distant gunfire. Evelyn froze beside the janitorial closet, one gloved hand gripping a fresh mop. Benji poked his head out from behind the linen chute. "What's a code yellow?" "Security threat," Evelyn said. "Usually means someone got angry." "How angry?" She shut the closet gently. "We'll find out." 2 floors up, the admin hallway was chaos under a shell of silence. A man in civilian clothes paced near the HR office, middle-aged, wearing a rain-soaked jacket and a hospital ID badge around his neck that did not match his face. 2 VA police officers flanked the hallway, hands twitching near holsters. The man shouted again, something about custody papers, something about a brother who died for nothing. His voice cracked like brittle glass. Behind the frosted windows, nurses whispered into radios. Staff peeked from offices and quickly closed their doors. A young security intern clutched a clipboard like it was armor. Evelyn arrived without a word. She did not ask permission. She did not announce herself. She walked straight into the tension and kept walking until she stood just behind the officers. "Let me try," she said. The man's name was Wayne Dillard. His records showed 3 visits to the outpatient psych unit in the last year. His brother, a Marine, had died during a medical transport delay between San Antonio and Austin. Wayne had been calling the hospital daily ever since. This morning, he showed up with a folder full of paperwork and rage too big to carry. "I just want someone to say it mattered," he shouted. Evelyn stepped forward slowly, palms open. "What was his name?" Wayne blinked, thrown off. "What?" "Your brother. What was his name?" He stared at her. "Caleb." She nodded. "Caleb Dillard. Corporal. 2nd Battalion. Correct?" Wayne's breath hitched. "I read his file," she said quietly. 2 tours, motor transport, injured during evac." Wayne's eyes filled. "They told me he was stable. Then they told me he was gone. Same call." Evelyn took another step closer. "I'm sorry. For the delay. For the silence." Wayne shook. "You don't get to be sorry. You weren't there." Evelyn's voice did not rise. "I was. Different sand. Different year. Same kind of call." She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded sheet, the hospital's new grievance process form. She held it out without moving. "You want someone to hear you. This is how you start." Wayne looked down at the paper. He didn't take it, but he stopped shouting. 20 minutes later, he was gone, escorted peacefully. No cuffs, no tasers. Chuck arrived 5 minutes after that, holding 2 coffees and wearing an expression like someone had just dented his truck. "You defused that?" he asked. Evelyn nodded. Benji grinned. She Jedi mind-tricked him into surrender. Chuck handed her the coffee. "They want to name you safety liaison." "I'm a janitor." "Exactly. Nobody notices janitors. Best position in the building." Later that day, Evelyn walked the 2nd floor wing alone. The halls smelled faintly of floor wax and lemon. She passed room 218, pediatric recovery, and paused. The boy, Aaron, sat by the window with a comic book open across his knees. He looked up and smiled. "Miss Evelyn." She blinked. "Your mom told you my name?" "Nope. I remembered your boots." Evelyn stepped inside. His mother was asleep in the chair. She nodded toward the comic. "What you reading?" "Captain Valor." He held it up. The hero on the cover wore a half-mask and held a riot shield in one hand, a cleaning mop in the other. "They made this one after the storm floods," Aaron said. "He saved people from a hospital, just like you." Evelyn looked at the cover. She didn't speak. By evening, the hospital felt different. It was subtle, a shift in posture, in temperature. People nodded more. Chuck passed her a requisition form without grumbling. A nurse left an extra coffee on her cart with a post-it. "Thank you for room 312. In the locker room, Benji was reading a training manual upside down. "Have you decided yet?" he asked. Evelyn unlaced her boots. "About what?" "The promotion, liaison, clipboard club, better hours, bigger headaches." She shrugged. "Thinking." Benji held up the manual. "I was thinking, too, about applying for the patient intake team, maybe EMT training after that." She glanced over. "You're good with people." "Not like you," he said. Evelyn turned to him fully. "You're better." Benji blinked. "Because you're still soft," she added. "It takes strength to stay that way." That night, she returned home later than usual. The hallway outside her apartment was dark. The motion light had gone out again. She unlocked the door by feel, stepped inside, and flicked the switch. A pile of mail had gathered under the radiator. Bills, flyers, one envelope with no return address. Inside was a photo, a framed copy of a newspaper article, yellowing at the edges. Hero Sergeant saves convoy from ambush. Her name printed in bold. No note. Just that. She sat down slowly. The image, once a source of weight, of pressure, now felt distant, like something that happened to someone else, but not forgotten. She reached for a small corkboard beside her desk, thumbtacked the article next to Aaron's crayon drawing, the soldier with the cape, side by side now, not a past and a present, but one whole story. 2 days later, she said yes to the promotion, not because it meant more money, not because Chuck asked again, but because someone needed to stand between the cracks, between protocol and people, between the silence and those shouting into it. Evelyn Harper had spent years learning how to disappear. Now she was learning how to be seen, without apology. The badge was heavier than she expected, not in weight. It was just a laminated square with her name printed in small font above the new title, Liaison, Sanitation and Safety Compliance, but in what it meant. It marked her. Not invisible anymore, not just a pair of boots in the hallway. When Evelyn clipped it to her collar, even Chuck looked twice. "Looks good on you," he said, then added, "Don't let it go to your head." "I won't," she said. "Plenty of worse things stuck there already." Chuck almost smiled. Almost. The first day in the new role was a blur of protocols, meetings, and introductions she had no interest in remembering. The admin floor was a world apart, all ergonomic chairs, filtered air, and hushed voices behind half-open doors. People used words like compliance metrics and cross-functional integration. She took notes, but not about what they expected. She wrote down what people avoided. Who looked away when she entered the room? Which administrators smiled too fast and used support staff like a synonym for afterthought? Later, Benji passed her in the corridor, wheeling a new disinfectant cart. "You look like someone gave you a promotion and a root canal in the same day," he whispered. "They're similar," Evelyn replied. "Both start with pain and end with an apology." By noon, she had filed 3 hazard reports, one for a leaking vent in the basement hallway, one for broken safety signage near the ICU elevator, and one for an administrator who had instructed custodial staff to ignore the expired chemical bins in supply closet C4. Chuck raised an eyebrow when he saw the last one. That was fast. Evelyn said nothing. "Do you want to make enemies your first week?" She shrugged. "If they're angry, it means they noticed." But it was not until Friday that she faced the first real test. A call came through at 6:40 a.m., 2 hours before her shift. Patient slip and fall, East Wing corridor, possible custodial error. She arrived 10 minutes later. No coffee, no time, just boots on and badge visible. The scene was already swarming. A man lay on a stretcher grimacing, elderly, his hospital gown stained with blood. The night nurse, flustered, explained that he had slipped outside the patient shower room. A wet floor. No warning sign. The incident report was already being written, and the blame had already landed on Camila Torres, the night shift custodian. 23, part-time, no benefits. First job out of high school. Evelyn had trained her 2 weeks ago. "I cleaned the floor," Camila said, voice trembling. "But someone walked through with wet shoes. I went to grab another sign from the storage closet. I was only gone 2 minutes." The supervisor frowned. "Still negligence. You know the policy. Sign must be present." Evelyn's eyes swept the hallway. 2 mop streaks intersected at the edge of the fall zone. One fresh, one older. A discarded coffee cup lay crushed near the trash chute. "Where's the camera?" she asked. The supervisor blinked. "Camera?" "There's one above the corridor junction. Motion triggered." He hesitated. "Footage takes a week to pull." Evelyn reached for her phone. "I'm not asking. I'm reporting a safety dispute. That triggers same-day review. Camilla looked up in disbelief. Why are you doing this? Evelyn met her gaze. Because you did your job, and someone's trying to make you pay for doing it imperfectly. She turned to the supervisor. And that's not going to happen. Not today. By 10:15 a.m., the footage was clear. A dietary delivery employee had spilled a cup of coffee near the corridor entrance and failed to report it. Camilla had wiped it up. The slip happened before she could place the second sign. Evelyn filed the corrected report, attached the footage, and called Camilla into the staff kitchen. You're cleared, she said simply. Camilla's hands shook. I thought they were going to fire me. They wanted to. Camilla blinked. But they didn't? Because you're not invisible anymore. Later that afternoon, Chuck leaned against the wall outside Evelyn's office, a converted storage closet with one chair and a ventilation hum loud enough to drown small talk. Words out, he said. Camilla's calling you her guardian angel. She does that again, I'm filing a citation, Evelyn said flatly. Chuck chuckled. You're making people nervous. Good. Nervous people don't get lazy. That evening, Evelyn walked the long way through the hospital. Past ICU. Past the pediatric wing. Into the back corridor near the employee break room where a cluster of signs had once posted rotating shift schedules in dry erase marker. Now, something new hung beside them. A bulletin board. Real wood. Glass frame. Inside, printed in plain black type, worker grievance reporting procedure, confidential. Anonymous options available. All concerns receive direct response within 72 hours. Below it, a box, padlocked, labeled Internal Safety Liaison. Benji had installed it the night before. Evelyn hadn't asked him to. As she stood reading the flyer, a nurse passed by and nodded. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? Evelyn asked. For showing up. At home that night, Evelyn stared at her corkboard. The boy's drawing still hung in the center, next to the news clipping. She reached for a new pushpin and pressed it into the corner of a fresh sheet. A printed message. No decoration, no bold type. Just the words she had typed that morning into her own report. Respect is not granted. It is earned. In silence, in sweat, and in the spaces no one else bothers to look. She turned off the light. Tomorrow, she would show up again. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. No return address, no stamp, just a plain envelope slid under the hospital's staff break room door. Benji found it wedged against the baseboard and brought it straight to Evelyn, who was inventorying hazard gear in the lower annex. I think it's for you, he said, holding it out like it might explode. Evelyn took it without a word, opened it carefully. Inside, one sentence handwritten in block letters, "Thank you for seeing what they would rather ignore." There was no name. She pinned the note to the inside of her locker, just beneath a printout of the new grievance protocol. It was the third week since the liaison program launched, and the ripple effects had started to reach the surface. Camilla's incident report had been officially closed, her record cleared. 2 janitorial staff received retroactive overtime after Evelyn flagged discrepancies in digital timestamps. An unreported mold leak in the sub-basement had triggered a full inspection and relocation of the dialysis overflow storage. Chuck called it progress. Benji called it the Harper effect. Evelyn just called it work. But not everyone welcomed the change. She began to feel it, subtle at first. A shift in tone during morning briefings. Memos copied to her inbox without context. Paperwork slow-walked by clerks who once smiled and now offered only shrugs. Did you notice they're not calling on you in planning sessions? Benji asked one afternoon, his voice low. They're calling, Evelyn said. They're just hoping I won't speak. That Thursday, her keycard stopped working. Twice. First at the safety archives room, then again outside the controlled access hallway to patient records. Both times, a custodial tech let her in, frowning. "System glitch," the IT desk said. But the pattern was too precise, too deliberate. When Evelyn reported the issue, the building's systems manager responded with a clipboard and a warning. "Your access level was reviewed," he said. "By who?" "Department head. She's requesting confirmation of your daily area needs moving forward." Evelyn didn't blink. "Then tell her I'll send a map, marked in blood." The systems manager flinched. "Was that a joke?" "I haven't decided." Chuck cornered her that evening outside the vending machines. "They're trying to freeze you out," he said, arms crossed. "Someone up the chain wants you gone." Evelyn nodded. "Figures. You gonna stop?" "No." Chuck gave a soft grunt, then pulled a folded paper from his back pocket. "What's this?" "Roster of employees on temp contracts, no benefits, rotating hours. They've been skating under the policy change." Evelyn took the list. "You didn't get this from me," Chuck added. "I didn't see you." "Damn right you didn't." That weekend, Evelyn worked alone. She stayed late, combed through shift logs and call-outs, cross-referenced pay stubs with badge entry records. A pattern emerged. Employees with inconsistent hours were being swapped mid-week, intentionally rotated to prevent them from reaching the 90-day benefits threshold. One name appeared the most: Sarah Monroe, oncology floor custodian. 93 days worked over 4 months. Never 90 days in a row. Evelyn found her in the supply closet Sunday morning. "Sarah," she said gently, "how long have you been asking for full-time hours?" "Since February," the woman replied, voice tight. "Every time I get close, they shuffle my shifts or write me up for coverage inconsistency." "You ever file a report?" "I tried. Got called into HR. They said I misunderstood the policy." "You didn't." Sarah's lip trembled. "I'm not trying to cause trouble. My son has asthma. I just want insurance." Evelyn nodded once. "You'll have it." The next day, she dropped a packet of documentation on the desk of the VA regional director. No fanfare, no warning, just data, statements, policy comparisons, and a note clipped to the front. "If you deny this grievance, I'll file it again, and again, until I find someone who remembers why this place was built." She left before anyone could respond. That afternoon, Sarah's status was changed to full-time. 2 others followed within the week. But the silence around Evelyn grew louder. Benji began noticing it first, the quiet that followed when she entered a room, the emails left unanswered, the way senior staff mentioned her only in the abstract. "They're freezing the Ice Queen," one administrator said in passing. Evelyn didn't mind the label, she minded the reason. That night, she met with Chuck in the underground records room, lights buzzing above rows of old metal cabinets. "They want me boxed out," she said. Chuck leaned against a filing cabinet. "Because you're cutting their shortcuts. They're protecting themselves. I'm not the problem. I'm the flashlight." He scratched his chin. "You want my advice?" "No." He gave it anyway. "Lean into the silence. Let it show you who matters." A few days later, a janitorial crew chief named George pulled her aside. "Got something for you," he muttered. "Top floor lab trash bin." She followed him to the maintenance corridor. Inside the bin, beneath a layer of disposal bags, was a folder. Anonymous reports, 5 of them, all describing the same issue: supervisors clocking employees in early without consent, to pad performance metrics, overtime unpaid, schedules rewritten post facto. No one had dared file them officially. "They trust you," George said. "They're scared, but they're watching." Evelyn stared at the folder. "This is a start," she said. That night, Evelyn sat in her car under the soft hum of the parking lot lights. She thought of Sarah, breathing easier, of Camilla, still holding her job, of George quietly risking his own, of her brother, who once said that integrity was measured not by volume, but by consistency. She opened her glove box and pulled out a small notebook. On the first page, she wrote, "Silence is where power hides. I am not here to make noise. I'm here to pull it out by the root." She shut the book. In the darkness, she smiled, not because it was over, but because now it was really beginning. The first time someone tried to discredit her, it was sloppy. A vague complaint was filed to HR under a Jane Doe alias. It accused Evelyn of creating a hostile work environment, of threatening junior staff, of imposing military standards on civilian roles. The language was corporate, scripted, aimed more at undermining than accusing. Benji was the first to see it. He'd overheard a clerk in records whisper about Harper's file being flagged for internal review. He texted her from the stairwell between shifts. "Heads up, someone's trying to smear you. Thought you should know." Evelyn read the message without reacting. Then she walked into HR, uninvited, unscheduled, and asked to see her personnel file. The HR lead, Mrs. Kellen, was a precise woman. Thin voice, thin patience. She wore anxiety like cologne. "I can't show you an open grievance," she said, gesturing toward her desk with neatly stacked folders. "It's confidential until investigated." Evelyn's tone was even. "Then investigate it now, with me present." "That's not procedure." "I'm not procedure." Kellen hesitated. Evelyn's badge caught the light, not the laminated liaison one, but the faded bronze star pin she kept clipped to the inside of her ID pouch. Something about that gave Kellen pause. She opened the file. The complaint was unsigned, unsubstantiated. No dates, no names, no witness statements. Just phrases like intimidating presence, abrasive communication, and failure to foster collaboration. "Sounds like a man wrote this," Evelyn said flatly. Kellen blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said it sounds like someone's scared of being held accountable." She stood. "You'll find more reports like this in the coming weeks, because systems fight back when they're exposed. But I'll still be here." Evelyn walked out without another word. Chuck found her later in the elevator, sipping burnt coffee and reading the new safety compliance audit results. "They came for you?" he asked. "Light tap at the door," she said. "HR?" She nodded. "The kind of scare tactic that works on people who don't know how fear works." Chuck grinned. "What?" she asked. "You're starting to sound like a leader." "I'm not here to lead." "Exactly. That's why you are." That week, more letters arrived, each one handwritten, slipped under doors, taped inside supply closets, wedged behind clock-in terminals. Some were simple. "You're the reason I didn't quit. Thank you for fighting like we matter." Others were detailed, accounts of years of quiet exploitation. A janitor written up for sitting down after mopping 14 patient rooms. A kitchen worker docked 2 hours for being late after picking up an extra shift. An orderly who hadn't taken a vacation in 6 years for fear his hours would be cut. Evelyn read every word. She started a spreadsheet. Friday morning, she walked into the operations meeting with a folder in one hand and a photo in the other. The room went still. 12 department heads, 3 directors, 2 VPs, all seated around a table far too polished to reflect real work. "Good morning," she said. "I'm going to show you something." She held up the photo first, a picture of a janitor's schedule board from a year ago. Names crossed out, double shifts scribbled in red pen, arrows pointing to weekends with no call, no show scrawled beside dates that matched public holidays. "This is not oversight," she said. "It's strategy. It's how you starve someone just slow enough that they don't scream." Someone cleared their throat. She opened the folder and passed copies around. "These are real testimonies, names redacted for protection, collected over 3 weeks, cross-referenced with badge access logs and timesheet data." The director of facilities leaned forward. We have protocols in place. No, Evelyn cut in. You have policies. What you don't have is follow-through. She paused. I'm not here to make enemies, but I am here to end excuses. No one interrupted again. After the meeting, two senior managers pulled her aside. You made your point, one said, half impressed, half wary. We'll review the grievances, the other added. Quietly. Evelyn met their eyes, unblinking. Quiet's how this happened. She walked away before they could respond. That evening, Chuck handed her a sealed envelope. What's this? A copy of your HR file. Figured you'd want to see what else is in there. She opened it slowly. 2 pages had been added. A formal internal memo recommending Evelyn for a department-wide compliance oversight role, regional level. The note at the bottom was from the same HR director who'd refused to let her read the complaint. Effective leadership demonstrates not force, but integrity. Evelyn folded the letter and tucked it away. On Sunday, she returned to the pediatric wing. Aaron was sitting cross-legged on the bed, building something out of colored pipe cleaners. When he saw her, he lit up. Miss Evelyn. You're still here, she said softly. Mom says I can go home next week, but I told her I need one more checkup from my superhero first. Evelyn stepped closer. I'm not a superhero. Yeah, but you act like one. He held up the pipe cleaner sculpture, a figure with big boots and a small shield made from a bottle cap. This is you, he said, and I made the shield extra strong, because you protect people. She swallowed hard. Then she took the sculpture in both hands like it was made of glass. That night, she added it to her corkboard, pinned beside the drawing, beside the photo, beside the list of grievances she planned to submit on Monday. It was not a shrine. It was a ledger, and she intended to balance every line. On the day the inspection team arrived, no one smiled. 3 officials in dark suits, clipboards, notepads, phones out but never answered. They didn't speak much, just watched, toured every floor, checked every logbook, read every safety binder with surgical precision. No warning had been given. But Evelyn had been ready for weeks. The VA's internal compliance office had launched a pilot review of employee-driven reforms after Evelyn's data reached regional administration. They wanted to know, could a liaison model, built from the lowest rank up, actually change something? Could transparency exist without disruption? They called it an audit. But for people like Evelyn, it was a reckoning. Chuck found her near the south stairwell around mid-morning. His tie was crooked, his voice quiet. You good? Evelyn didn't look up from the maintenance logs. I've been good. Now I'm patient. They're upstairs, Chuck said. You'll be called in. She nodded once, then returned to her notes. Her turn came just after lunch. A windowless conference room, fluorescent lights buzzing faintly overhead. 1 long table, 2 inspectors seated, 1 standing near the door. Ms. Harper, the lead said, not offering a hand. You've become notable. I'm not the point, Evelyn replied. The results are. They asked questions about protocols, about employee morale, about the ripple effects of her filed reports. Would you say your presence has created disruption? No, Evelyn said. I would say it revealed neglect. They asked if she had leadership aspirations. She didn't answer. Do you believe this model can scale? One asked. Evelyn sat back. Her voice was flat. Not defensive, not proud, clear. Not unless people in power accept that change means loss. Not revenue, not reputation, but comfort. The comfort of not knowing. The comfort of looking away. The inspectors exchanged a glance. The interview ended 15 minutes later. No verdict, no applause, just a nod and the door. Outside the room, Benji waited with 2 coffees. They grilled you? Like a steak, she said. Charred or medium rare? Rare, but still bleeding. They walked back down together. By Thursday, whispers had started. No one knew what the inspectors would decide. Some feared cutbacks. Others feared retaliation. But in the break room, people were still talking, still filing concerns, still submitting observations to the wooden box on the wall. That afternoon, someone added a sign above the box. This is where silence ends. No one claimed it, but everyone left it there. The decision came the following Monday. An official email from the regional office sent to all hospital staff. Following our recent compliance audit, the Liaison Oversight Program at Austin VA Medical Center will be extended for 12 months with expanded scope and support. Evaluation reports indicate measurable improvements in safety, morale, and procedural integrity. Other facilities may adopt similar pilot models pending further review. Below the signature, a single name was added: Evelyn Harper, Program Liaison, Founding Pilot Coordinator. Benji printed it out and taped it to the break room fridge. Chuck said nothing, but he bought donuts for the whole sanitation crew. When Evelyn walked through the halls that day, heads turned, not in fear, not in silence, but in recognition. That evening she stood in front of the corkboard in her apartment. She moved the letter to the center. Pinned beneath it was the drawing, the sculpture. The list of names, still growing. She added a new one. Tobias R. Filed complaint after 3 years of silence. Received back pay. Applied for supervisor training. Then she stepped back and looked at it all. Not a trophy wall, a map of what had been and what still needed to be done. 2 weeks later, she was invited to speak at a regional leadership summit. She wore her boots, not the polished ones, the worn ones, the ones with bleach stains on the soles and a scuff on the left toe from when she'd kicked open a jammed supply door. She stood at the podium, hands steady, notes in her pocket, untouched, and she began. I used to think respect came from title, or uniform, or the volume of your voice. But I was wrong. Respect is earned, in silence, in sweat, in every task done when no one is looking, and still done right. For too long, we have mistaken efficiency for leadership, control for competence. But real leadership begins lower, with the people who scrub the floors you walk on, who see what you choose to ignore. My name is Evelyn Harper. I served in combat, but this fight is harder, because this one is invisible. This one lives in scheduling software and in ignored complaint boxes, and in the moment you decide not to ask why someone looks exhausted. It lives in the hallway between dignity and survival. But I've seen what happens when people stand up anyway. And it starts with something small. Not a revolution. Just one person refusing to look away. The room was silent when she finished. Then, slowly, from the back, came applause. Not thunderous, not performative. Earned. After the event, a young man approached her near the stairwell. Early 20s, janitorial badge, nervous. Ma'am, he said, I work nights at the Houston VA. My mom sent me your speech. Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Your mom works in sanitation? No, she just said I needed to know people like you exist. He hesitated, then offered a folded piece of paper. This is what I've seen at our site. No one's listening. Not yet. But I want to try. Evelyn took the paper, read the first line, then looked up at him. Then start here, she said, and don't stop. That night, Evelyn returned to her apartment and opened the notebook on her desk. Page by page, line by line, she began to record what had changed. And what still hadn't. Because the work was not over. The silence, though weaker, was still there, in corners and closets and boardrooms, waiting to reclaim ground. But so was she. Evelyn Harper, custodian, liaison, combat vet, reluctant leader, not appointed, not elected, but present. And that was enough.